you're expecting a review of this book, the book that changed my life, this isn't that video. This is a video about how the right book at the right time genuinely changed my life and put me in a direction I never expected. Now you can get your hands on this book, which I'll tell you more about this book in a minute. You can get your hands on this book. I've wrote a little note in there and I'm going to place it somewhere in the location I am and show you that location at the end of the video. So tune in at the end and you'll see where the book is and you can possibly go out and find it. Now before I talk about this book and how it changed my life, I kind of have to rewind to before the book and tell you what my life was like before the book. And I think a lot of people can relate to this. My life consisted of constantly wanting things to have my attention. And I think video games, movies, TV shows, reels on Instagram and TikTok and stuff like that, it's almost as if they don't grab your attention in the first couple of seconds, you discard it. You just don't want anything to do with it. You swipe away to the next video. It's got to captivate you almost instantly. And that unfortunately is part of this hustle culture where if something is not serving you, you discard it. You swipe away onto the next thing. My life consisted mostly of video games, and this isn't a slander against video games. I think video games are fantastic. I still love them. But they were my form of escapism because of that hustle culture vibe where video games are very much there to grab your attention straight away and keep you captivated throughout the whole video game. Books are not meant to be like that. They're a slow burn, they're informational, they take time, plot has to develop. I would never read fiction. That includes fantasy, mythology, sci-fi, historical fiction, because I didn't feel like it served me. I thought, you know, this is not a self-help book, this is not going to improve me in any way, therefore I'm not going to read it. So for the most part, I never really finished a book. I would probably get a third of the way through a book and I would discard it, and it just wasn't for me. And then I would go back to playing video games or watching TV, staring at my phone, watching YouTube, and again, if them videos didn't captivate me in the first few seconds, they just weren't for me. Many gods and goddesses are named in Norse mythology. You will meet quite a few of them in these pages. Neil Gaiman's Norse mythology. This book is the book that changed my life, and it's not necessarily about the content. It's more about the right book entering my life at the right time. I was walking through what's called Bull Moose, which is kind of like a used bookstore, video game store, music store. It's a mishmash of all these different second-hand mediums that is in Maine in the US. If you don't know, I actually live in the USA. I'm traveling the country in my school here, and at the time I was living in Maine and I picked up this book. This was in 2016, I think it was. And I saw it, Neil Gaiman. I've heard the name before, American Gods and a few other incredible books. I recognized the name, and Norse mythology was something that I was already interested in. At a young age, I was interested in mythology, whether that be Greek, Egyptian, Roman, Celtic, Norse. I already had that little bit of a spark. And I saw this book and I thought, oh, I'll give it a try, why not? Luckily, this book is in a short story format, so it's very easy to pick up and just read one short story and then put it back down. However, Neil Gaiman's writing is so good that it legitimately captivated me from start to finish, and I read every single short story from the very start to the very end, and I could not put this book down. In fact, I remember being really young, right when my dad took me to see The Fellowship of the Ring in the cinemas. I would go into the shed in the garden and my dad would have this old bookshelf full of fantasy books like David Eddings. Is it Eddings? David Eddings, I think his name is. The Pawn of Prophecy or whatever it's called. My dad loved them fantasy books. And I was so captivated, but I never got into it. I never had that ability to have my attention captivated, even if it wasn't grabbing me. I couldn't get into them slow burn books, but this managed to do that. And I ended up going back into Bull Moose and picking up the next book, Name of the Wind, picking up the next book, Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson, picking up more Norse mythology, picking up Celtic mythology, picking up sci-fi books, and all of a sudden I had a library. I had a library of books, of subjects I didn't know I was interested in. After this book entered my life, I started to see different things developing, different interests. I noticed that there was a whole community on YouTube called BookTube, where they review books, they buy books, they show off the books they've bought, they do their best favorite books, their TBRs, all these different things. Shout out to some booktubers who I'm good friends with. I didn't know this community even existed. All of a sudden I was reading books on spirituality, which I've been a staunch atheist for a long time, and I was questioning my thoughts on the universe, on myself, on the way I live, on sustainability. And all of a sudden my whole life slowed down a little bit. So when I was making videos on YouTube about video games, my heart wasn't in it anymore. I was moving away from them video games, and although I still play certain video games that I'm very excited for, God of War, Ragnarok, Star Wars, Jedi Survivor, Diablo 4, there's still games I'm interested in. I get more excited when a new book comes out by my favourite author. All of a sudden I was able to pick up self-help books, which I hadn't been able to pick up before, and read through them from cover to cover, because I understood now that things were a slow burn and they didn't have to captivate you straight away. I was learning different things, like how to breathe properly, learning how to breathe properly with Wim Hof in his new book, and a bunch of other amazing books that have genuinely changed my outlook on life through self-development. These were books I were never able to finish from cover to cover unless it was from reading something like this that got me into books in the first place. It also made me see the world in a different way from this hustle culture, this attention-grabbing hustle culture, where it's almost like the Gary V. If you're not doing something all the time that's making money, that's benefiting you, it's not good for you. And that's not good for your mental health. I realized that very quickly when my mental health spiraled down and I was in a deep, deep depression. And although I still have depression, books and slowing my life down has definitely helped me. In fact, my mental health has got so much better that I can look back on my previous times before books entered my life, before I changed my thought process and my way of living, and almost feel sad that I didn't discover this sooner. Speaking of mental health, a quick word from today's sponsor. Thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. BetterHelp is the world's largest therapy service, and it's 100% online. With BetterHelp, you can tap into a network of 30,000 licensed and experienced therapists that are there for your needs. To get started, all you need to do is answer a few simple questions, and BetterHelp will match you with a therapist that meets your needs. You can message your therapist whenever you like, or like me, you can schedule weekly calls. And if the therapist isn't right for you and you're not connecting, you can just switch to another therapist and there's no extra charge. With BetterHelp, you get the same professionalism as you do with therapy in office, but it's more flexible, more affordable, and way more convenient. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/originalhuman. That's betterhelp, HELP.com/originalhuman. There will also be a link down below in the description. Thank you again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. Now, talking about mental health, I want to just read a passage from one of my favorite books of all time. This is The Stormlight Archives, which is a series of books by someone called Brandon Sanderson. There is a character in there called Kaladin who has deep depression, PTSD, and anxiety, just like I had when I left the military. And he's speaking to someone called Whit, and Whit is talking to him about his depression. Let me read this passage for you because it's something that has stuck with me. It's ingrained into me. "It will," Whit said, "but then it will get better, and then it will get worse again, then better. This is life. And I will not lie by saying every day will be sunshine, but there will be sunshine again, and that is a very different thing to say. That is the truth. I promise you, Kaladin, you will be warm again." Beautiful passage that for some reason sticks with me, because that's what my depression was like. I would be in this very dark, horrible place, and then the next day might be great. And it's important to read books to see different developments of mental health like that. In fact, when you read books, you're all of a sudden thrust into other people's shoes, from people you wouldn't expect, from historical figures, from medieval England, to mythologies in Egypt, all the way to random people living in the US in buses. You can step into the shoes of millions of people just by reading books. And these books could be set on different worlds. They could be set on no world. They could be set in space. and yet we have things that relate to them that change you as a person. Now, I'm not saying that Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman is the book that's going to change your life. It's a good book. If you want my quick review, I really liked it. I like the short format of the short stories, and it was captivating and very funny in parts and interesting. This might not be the book for you, and that's okay. But what's important is that there is a book out there somewhere that if you pick it up at the right time, in the right place in your life, it will change your life. Now, I did say at the beginning of the video that you can get your hands on this exact book. I wrote a little note in this book, and I'm going to be placing it in the location where we are parked right now. I will drop a pin, give you coordinates on this video, and you can go out and find it. If you find this book, take a picture of yourself, tag me on Instagram, and I will feature you in the next video. I also just want to say, if you are looking for a book, check out your local library first or your local bookstore. Do not go to Jeffrey Bezos on Amazon unless it's something that you very much can't find. It's very difficult to find. Even then, you could ask your local library. Use Amazon as a last resort, and please go to your local library. With that, I want to thank you for watching this new style of video. I'm hoping to slow my content down and have more thought-provoking conversations with you, where I can talk about life and things that make me happy, and hopefully inspire you to make changes to make improvements on your life as well. Again, thanks for watching, and don't underestimate the power of the right book at the right time.